Springfield's Talk 1041. Hello, everyone. Good Tuesday. My name is Nick Reed. Welcome to the show. I saw the...
Welcome back.
Oh, hey, thanks. That one day I was gone.
Well, yeah, but
Did it
still.
seem like it was longer than that?
No, we just missed you
Oh.
all. Happy to see you again.
Thanks, Darren. Thank you to Darren Chappell for sitting in. Someone had texted me over the weekend. They said, seems like every time you're going to be gone, there's something pretty big
Honestly,
that happens.
I was thinking that same exact thing.
I don't know if it just seems like that, but I do remember, and I want to say actually Darren would have been filling in for me. It was like 10 years ago with one of the school shootings had happened. It was the one that Alex Jones got in trouble because that which one was that? I can't think of. Anyhow, I remember that happening. And then thinking, you know what, I'm kind of glad I'm on vacation because I just don't want to talk about that.
For some reason, I have it in my mind that you were also on vacation when the attempted assassination of Trump happened.
I was.
Yep, that's what I thought.
Yeah, so that is true.
So maybe you should just stop taking vacation.
Yeah, perhaps I should. It does seem like pretty eventful things tend to occur when I'm going to be off for a day or a week or however long. But, it can't have... Fortunately, we have very good people like Darren to sit in, and so it's not like, oh, I don't want to listen to that. I mean, he obviously is going to have tremendous insight, particularly when it comes to constitutional issues, and that was, of course, the big word of the day. These are these instances where suddenly people who never care about the Constitution in Washington, D.C. have this great concern about the Constitution and war powers, but it's becoming clear. So there's two discussions here. One is the real honest conversation about constitutionality of these things. And well, is this, I mean, some assessments are this isn't war. This isn't what, this is a different thing. This is taking out a specific facility. It's, quote, not a war against the country, but against a facility. And some people can say, well, that's just, semantics. I think that reasonable people can have these discussions. And frankly, sometimes, again, I don't know that there is an absolute right answer oftentimes. Sometimes, there's a little bit on, different perspectives that kind of make sense. So there's that discussion, which is an interesting discussion. But then there's also... okay, come on, people. There isn't a president alive today that hasn't done something similar to this, carrying out military action without getting, quote, approval of Congress. In fact, once Obama sought it and Congress voted against the action, there wasn't even an absence of congressional approval. There was congressional disapproval, and he went ahead and did it anyway. And people are wising up to this. Increasingly, there are some of these voices that are listened to on the Democrat side, everyone from Stephen A. Smith to Charlemagne the God, that are saying, come on. I mean, really, Obama did this, Clinton did this, Biden, you have all of these presidents that have done it. And now, because Trump did it, suddenly this is something that's impeachable. People are beginning to wake up to the fact that it's painfully obvious the Democrat Party is a party that is simply about whatever Trump says we're the opposite. Now, there is a bit of a mixed bag, admittedly. You've got the whole Thomas Massie situation, which I think becomes unnecessarily larger than it needs to be, and that's on Trump to some degree. And then you do even have some Democrats like Fetterman that's like, this is totally awesome. God bless America. This is what we're all about, and piling on him. I also have some interesting audio I want to play of a lifelong Democrat activist, just normal lady, on Mark Halperin's podcast, and she is asking a Democrat strategist, like she's expressing her frustration as a Democrat and declaring, I don't even know what my party stands for anymore. I have no clue. Convince me to stay in the party. And some of what she has to say, I think, is increasingly a big part of the problem for the Democrat Party. And, the Democrat Party does stand for something, and it's whatever the opposite that Trump does. Well, the problem is for people that really do care, as misguided as they may be, believing that Democrats are the direction, and so they've long been an active member or voter within the Democrat Party. They want something more than that. It becomes embarrassing at some point, when you can't even explain what your party stands for other than saying, oh, well, that guy's just evil. You begin to realize that your party stands for nothing, and this is a big part of the problem. In fact, some polling that came out over the last several days, and we'll get into this as well, show that I think it's 47% of Democrats say there's a need for a third party. And this is a reflection of they feel that there is no party that represents them, because the party that they're part of doesn't represent anything other than Trump is Hitler. And after a while, that just gets kind of boring. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a slight chance for isolated showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny and hot with a high near 92, heat index values as high as 98. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 72. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 91, heat index values as high as 98. And on Thursday, sunny with a high near 91.
Springfield's Talk 1041. Well, this is a fun thing. There's a lot going on. A lot of stuff going on. And at the same time, you still have this discussion going on with Jake Tapper is still out there having these revelations, the stuff that's in his book. And he and Chuck Todd has this podcast. This is something that he started when he left the NBC Meet the Press show. And so the two of them sit down and they're just talking about these revelations. This is just this past Monday. I'm like, this is still being discussed. You all are still acting like you are bringing to light something new and interesting. Now, that being said, the discussion that I found to be most interesting was about the family. And listening to them explore this and discover that it's almost as if, I'm going to play the audio, in which Chuck Todd eventually has this epiphany. It's almost as if this Family Guy thing that we've been that Joe Biden was just a real family man. It's almost like that was a bill of goods. Oh, really? Oh, this is something that you're just now discussing. Now, this is the bill of goods that the media, people like him, people like Claire McCaskill, have all been selling us all along. Oh, the Republicans are just after him because he loves his family so much. This is just such a tight-knit family. Oh, it's just a family filled with love. And as an outside observer, it appeared to me that nothing could be further from the truth for a number of different reasons. So here is the back and forth discussion between Chuck Todd and Jake Tapper.
So, for me, the original sin was running in the first place.
Oh, well, yes, I've heard you talk about this because
his family was in crisis.
Right, because his daughter and his son were addicted to drugs.
I followed that Hunter Biden trial soup to nuts. I read every single transcript. I read all of the testimony. I cannot believe to this day, Jake, that Hunter Biden, that Joe Biden did this to his kids.
So somebody close to the family,
I can't believe that he did it.
Somebody close to the family told us, and this is in the book, that everybody knows, some of the family aphorisms like, my word is a Biden, or, et cetera, et cetera. A lesser known Biden family saying is, don't call a fat person fat. And by that they mean it's not about politeness. It's about hiding truths, not acknowledging truths. And this person close to the family suggested that there are lots of truths that the family did not want to face up to. One, Bo is dying. Mm-hmm. Two, Hunter is addicted to drugs. Three, Joe Biden cares about his family more than he cares about anything else. Mm-hmm. And those three are not true. This person close to the family said. And that's when you talk about his running in 2020. Yeah. I think that comes to bear because obviously he was putting his ambition and, if you want to be charitable, his hopes to save the country from Trumpism or whatever. Right. Obviously he was putting that above what was going on with his family and his two children and their struggles.
Look, I mean, you and I covered, for most of our professional lives, the story of Joe Biden was this guy cared about his family so much he commuted home every night from Washington.
Now, By the way,
what else you could say is this man was so ambitious that after his family went through that tragedy, he commuted every day to work. Right. Like it's the same story.
He had his narrative. His sister help raise his boys.
I sit here, I look at this, and I think, were we sold a 40-year bill of goods?
I mean, how long have we been talking about what a crappy family this is?
Oh, for a very long time. Very long time.
To hear it, and he's talking about what in the book and, looking back and his son and the daughter. It's not like these problems were a secret. This is just, again, these people that long portrayed him as a family man and long that they were part of the bill of goods, like everything else. I mean, this is just more of that from these people that were part of the lie, pretending as if they had no idea that they were part of the lie, just like the cognitive issues. And now it's almost like this whole family man stuff, this whole, he just loves his family so much. I mean, is it possible we were sold a bill of goods? We've talked over the years during his presidency about what my perspective was a little different than a lot of people. A lot of people saw this dynamic as Hunter Biden taking advantage of his dad. Dad wasn't getting a cut because Hunter Biden just felt really generous. In fact, we know from the laptop and his email communications with other family members that he was ticked off he had to give his dad the 10% or 20% or whatever the kickback was to his dad, that being President Joe Biden. So it wasn't that just a big thank you for Dad because he got me connected up with this job. And this is a guy who took his son that he knew had severe addictions when it comes to drugs, different substances, and apparently when it comes to trafficking women and sex and so forth. And he puts him in a position in Ukraine. He gets him this gig in which he's making, what is it, like $54,000 a month or something insane. And he's taking him all over the world, to China, to all these different places, in which just within 24 hours of these visits, there would be some new LLC opened up, some new contract that is, I should say an agreement, because a lot of the paper trails didn't exist. It was just cars and diamonds and money and cash put into these LLCs that then got distributed amongst the Biden family members. Now, I understand how at times family members, because they love other family members, can find themselves being enablers. I get that. But Joe Biden was taking a cut of it. Joe Biden demanded that it was about him. This is like prostituting your own child, putting your child, and then demanding, that like the pimp does, where's my cut? That's what Joe Biden was doing. And then you had people like Claire McCaskill out there claiming, oh no, this is just about a family man who loves his family so much, and these horrible, awful Republicans are just taking what otherwise would be this Norman Rockwell family setting of dad doing what he can to take care of his poor son with an addiction. That is total BS. He was using his son and his son's addiction. And listen, I'm not saying Hunter Biden is in this, or was in this victim vacuum. They all picked at each other. The way that Hunter Biden talked about the other family members, the way that these people talk, it was a full-blown, uncensored Jerry Springer show. And to hear Jake Tapper and Chuck Todd talk about this, I didn't know Jake Tapper was still out there, talking about these revelations as if they were revelations when they weren't revelations. But to hear Chuck, it's almost like we were sold a bill of goods. And I'm beginning to wonder if maybe this wasn't the most functional family we've ever experienced in the White House. Welcome to the world of awareness and clarity. And again, the fact that in this country, the role of the media, they are supposed to be the people who are telling us, providing us with information we don't know. And this is another example of what rational people who were paying attention already knew, but apparently the people who are supposed to be the provider of that information were the ones that didn't know it. Family, Claire McCaskill, the disgusting, dripping sappiness that would come out of her ignorant mouth on MSNBC about, just what a great family they are. If she thinks that's a great family, It makes you wonder what hers is like, what her family life is like. If she sees what has gone on with the Biden family, and she's like, "Oh, that is a wonderful family. Dang, Christmas must be fun around the McCaskill house." Sarah Myers.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company. Time is running out to file an insurance claim on storm damage. Don't let that happen. I want to recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they do this all day, every day. They know exactly what to look for during their free roof inspection to make sure that every single thing gets covered. And then they also walk with you through that insurance process every step of the way without making you sign anything, by the way. And they're not going to try to upsell you. They won't use scare tactics on you either. So if it is time to have the Pyramid Roofing Company team out to your home, make sure to reach out to Josh today and schedule that free roof inspection. Now you can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
We have Heroes Breakfast Friday.
That's
is that
right.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Man, this month just flew by.
When I came in and I saw the Heroes Breakfast certificates on my desk, I thought, wow, this is getting done ahead of time, like early. And then I looked at the calendar and said, nope. I mean, we
just in time.
just had one, it seems like.
I
I guess
know.
not. I mean, it was, what, like 4 weeks ago?
Yeah, I guess it was a month ago. Yeah.
Oh, were you gone for that one?
Oh, yeah. I guess
you
that's
were,
why I
so
did it early.
Yeah.
And that's that.
Okay, very good.
Heroes
we do have a
Breakfast.
Heroes Breakfast. That will be on Friday. So if you are a veteran, you come by between 6 and 9 a.m. as we broadcast live, and you're going to get some free breakfast there. Delta Roofing, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, the Warriors, Journey, and Scramblers, all making that possible. This Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. at Scramblers.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a slight chance for isolated showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny and hot with a high near 92, heat index values as high as 98. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 72. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 91, heat index values as high as 98. And on Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 91.
All right, so June 30th, that is currently the last day for the certified pre-owned 0.99% APR Honda True Certified Dream Deal sales event.
Ooh, that's coming right up.
I know, and it's a mouthful, too. Penninger Honda, South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn. That's where you can get that incredible deal. They still do have the free fuel for the summer as a part of their purchase a new vehicle, and that's a promotion that you will benefit from. And they are looking to purchase your vehicle, especially looking for quality used Hondas. Top dollar for your vehicle, plus give you an extra $1,000 towards your trade with the purchase of a new Honda. And, of course, a lot of other great deals, whether you're looking to lease or purchase. That is Penninger Honda, just south of Walnut Lawn, South Campbell. I wanted to play this story. Now, this is an expanded story on something that Mike Landis had at the top of the hour, and it's about fireworks. And I thought this was a really great story because this is a dismantling of another Sky is Falling story that we were hearing about just weeks ago, and that was fireworks and tariffs and how much it's going to be the most expensive 4th of July ever. Donald Trump is going to absolutely destroy Independence Day with these tariffs.
Some positive news tonight involving your 4th of July celebrations. Despite tariffs, fireworks will not cost you more. In fact, local stores telling us prices really haven't changed much from last year. Ozarks First, Carissa Codell, live in Springfield at a local fireworks store. Carissa, can you tell us why fireworks aren't affected this year?
Yeah, Bailey, most fireworks stores buy their fireworks for next year right after that holiday ends. So most of the fireworks that you see here have been bought before those tariffs were put into effect.
We've been really mindful of the impact that tariffs have had. We adjust, accordingly. Certainly nothing like we saw back in COVID when our prices rose quite a bit, but they're super, reasonable in line and kind of were close to where they were last year.
We care way more about customer satisfaction than prices.
This past Friday was the start of fireworks sales in Missouri for the 4th of July holiday.
We were super busy all weekend.
General Manager of Fireworks Supermarket Riley Glenn.
We also have these parachutes. These are so cute.
Tells me everything they buy is imported, with 90% of their products coming from China.
So we start receiving product months and months before the season starts. We received probably a majority in the wintertime. So that was, several months before all of the tariff stuff started.
In Greene County, fireworks sales are only allowed to Missouri residents from June 20th to July 10th. Glenn tells me this weekend they saw a record amount of customers.
I think people are just really excited and have gotten in here early this year.
Glenn says no matter the budget, there's always a way to put on a great show.
I think the best budget is going to be around $250 to $300. I think with that, you can get an absolute great show mixed in with a bunch of floor fireworks as well as aerial fireworks.
But then you've got people that want to spend $1,000 plus, and we try to give everyone a great, bang for your buck.
Now here at the fireworks stand on Glenstone in the parking lot of the Antioch Church, these are the fireworks that are going to explode and look and make those pretty colors. So now you can get most of these for $39.99, $25.99. There's some for $50. And now the Springfield Fire Department did provide some safety tips for your 4th of July. You can find those details on our website, ozarksfirst.com. Reporting live in Springfield, I'm Carissa Codell, Ozarks First.
All right, so the reporting around tariff time as we were, getting into what was going to eventually be fireworks season and the, oh my gosh, fireworks are going to be more expensive than ever. And I think the symbolism of that had some people thinking, oh, this is really going to hurt Trump because, all those MAGA people love Independence Day. They're all into patriotism and everything. And boy, they're really going to see it when they go to spend their money on fireworks like white trash always does. And these tariffs are really it's going to prove Trump doesn't know what he's doing and no impact. Now, I think it's interesting that they note the reason, and this is a great question to ask, why not? Well, we purchase the fireworks that we have today, usually around winter time. So that occurred before the tariffs went into place. Now, what does this mean for next year? It means that in all likelihood, in Trump wanting to get much of this all hashed out, China being the big one, that come winter time, all of that will be taken care of, and the tariff issue in any meaningful way will no longer be something that is going to be impacting the firework industry, and so things will maintain constant come time for purchasing for next year. We don't know that for sure. But the fact that you had a lot of media outlets, as they would talk about what this means, how this is going to raise prices, there were these arbitrary numbers that Democrats in particular were running around. It's going to cost the average American $15,000 more every year just to live, and just these outrageous numbers, which would mean if you look at over $1,000 a month, clearly that has not occurred. And it hasn't occurred because things are playing out exactly the way that Trump had expected them to play out. I imagine the reason that oftentimes the fireworks scenario and the tariffs on fireworks and the fact that because they come from China, this is going to be something that hits hard, but there never was, during that window of time in which that sky is falling scenario was being reported, apparently a call to any fireworks people. Because had they, and I'm not talking about locally here, I'm just overall, nationally is where this was being discussed. But had they done just a little bit of research, they would have found, or at least that appears to be the case here, I imagine that that's in line with firework sellers across the country, that the purchasing of fireworks for this particular season had already been purchased before there was any of the tariff situation at play. And so unless you had somebody that wanted to sell fireworks at a price that might, if the tariff issue didn't get taken care of, and so they're like, well, we need to plan for this upcoming season of purchasing being higher, and so we're going to charge more in order to get ahead of the curve, unless they do something like that, like what we're seeing here with this Ozarks First story, is that these firework prices are not going up due to tariffs. And the fact that they're having record-breaking season, or having a record-breaking season thus far, that's a sign of consumer confidence. That being said, do you guys do fireworks?
Yes, we do.
I mean, as growing up, we did them as kids. If memory serves, my dad had to go to the emergency room once because a Roman candle, he blew out the back end and hit his leg. I just remember being a little kid and this huge bruise on his leg. Could be a false memory, but seems like something he would do. But now as an adult, and the girl child, she's always away during the 4th, and so we just really, other than watching, we don't really purchase them any longer. But some of these people, and I know people that, I know one guy in particular, and I want to say I saw him several years ago. This is how I knew about it. And the back of a pickup truck was filled. I was like, what is and he said, yeah, we usually spend like $5,000 on fire. Like, oh my gosh.
We do.
And by the way, I don't think this is somebody that's really rich either. I mean, I was just like, holy cow.
We do like a little like family get together, and everybody has to bring their own fireworks.
Well, and so you've got to, your kids at that age where it's fun, and really starting to understand that, ooh, that's pretty and that sort of thing. And so, that, and you live out. And now I'm in Republic. So Republic over 4th of July, Independence Day, it is just nonstop because you can shoot off fireworks in Republic. And so what happens is people, particularly if, they have parents or grandparents or friends, relatives in the Republic area, they go to their houses.
Right.
So they can shoot them off. And I'm telling you, it is when I say nonstop, I am not joking. There are times when there is no break in silence between the fireworks in Republic. I don't mind it. I know it seems like increasingly every year people are posting about their dogs and stuff like that, and then you get that whole fight on social media. But yeah, Republic's always a hopping place. But these people, like, they showed, like, oh, here's for $29.95, $39.99. Oh, here's a package for $999. I'm like, man. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. People do whatever they want, and you just, what do you spend money on? Oftentimes, entertainments, and you have family get-togethers. But that's just crazy to me. I wouldn't even know what to buy. Now, the story also that Mike Landis had, I don't know if it was mentioned in there. Of course, Springfield, it is a no-no. Nothing like celebrating freedom by being told, here's what you can't do, other than sparklers. Because apparently sparklers, I don't know, can't start fires, apparently. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. It is really remarkable how many Trump-related events that in the moment are presented as, you just wait till you see the outcome of this, and then it just fades away. I mean, every time it becomes safer and safer to say, just wait, in 2 weeks from now, you're not going to hear any of this. I remember probably the most recent, the Elon Musk thing. And, I mean, they just really thought this was the end of the presidency. Oh, boy. And it was like, just wait a week. It'll go away. And it went away. Now, some may say, well, sure, but that's because this happened and that happened. Well, something always happens. This inflation scare that the Democrats and the media were running with, And I want to reiterate that it doesn't mean that there haven't been some businesses that have been impacted in some capacity. I think, you've had this store, I think, is it Home Goods? Isn't it Home Goods?
Yeah.
And people are like, well, they get a lot. Yeah, if you get a lot of stuff from China. Now, you know, how much of it is that? Is it a combination of things? We don't know. But, and in any economy, there are going to be things that occur that for certain products or services, it just isn't what the marketplace is bearing at the time, and sometimes policy can have an impact on that. And I know, because of conversations that I've either had or been privy to regarding people that are in certain industries, that it is something, at least as of a couple of months ago, that they were bracing for in the unknown and so forth. But this whole idea that this was going to just make Biden's inflation policies pale in comparison to those policies. I mean, it's just that, well, we thought that we suffered economically under the inflationary policies of the Democrats and the Biden administration. You just wait. And people aren't even thinking about it. It just has not translated. I recall at one point when it wasn't happening, the media's like, well, it'll be June. In June, that's when it's really going to happen. And June has come, and we're just about a week away getting out of June, and I'm not even hearing, well, just wait until July or wait until August. It, for a period of time, was almost like the inflation issue under Biden, where we're told there was no inflation. Then, well, it's just transitory. It's only going to last through the summer. And then, well, it may last a little bit longer. There's just always some excuse for why it didn't happen, but don't worry, it is going to happen, or do worry, it is going to happen. And it seems as if when it comes to the warnings of inflation, the last fear-mongering round was about, well, June. It's going to occur in June because that's when we're really going to start to see the impacts. And this just isn't part of the daily conversation any longer. You don't hear even Democrats talking about it so much. And I think it's largely because people those are the policies. Those are the things that are undeniable to the average voter. This is why Democrats trying to claim the economy was wonderful and that inflation wasn't an issue didn't work, because people are going to the grocery store every day. And it's why the fear-mongering of these tariffs are going to cost you $15,000 for the average person every year, and people aren't going to be able to afford anything, and this is a tax on the people. But people are they're just not feeling it. It is also amazing when the relative consistency of gas prices and the fact that what has been occurring, particularly since Friday in the Middle East, and while there's like a little bit of a bump, I mean, it's just amazing what that seems to signal. And that is that the world isn't really that concerned that there's going to be a World War III. And for all of the talk and the hype, dare I say, from some that Trump's going to start World War III, this is World War III, and the talk about troops on the ground, which I think a lot of that was thrown out there just in order to make it look like Trump was getting us into something completely reckless, and do the polling. Well, do you support troops on the ground? Well, who's talking about that? And while, of course, you can't deny that a situation like that isn't possible, it's not anything that was in the cards currently or anyone's talking about. But point being, with all of that noise and with these massive history-altering events taking place, the fact that gas prices are still pretty much the same, it's crazy when you think about how even the slightest hint of disruption in the Middle East a decade ago would have caused a real observable spike in gas prices. And the fact that from last time yesterday, I looked at the price of oil versus today. I mean, the fact that it's still, or it was yesterday, still, I think $10 less a barrel than prior to all of this stuff even starting. I think, interestingly enough, that is a sign of stability that has been created in that region of the world, where once upon a time, before the Abraham Accords and before the United States had all of these relationships with these other Middle Eastern countries that began to recognize the value in not being just a bunch of rogue countries that every time Israel was involved, they all gathered together and said, yeah, Israel's bad. And the fact that you have this, just think, if this had taken place 10 years ago, how different it may look. It could very well 10 years ago have been complete and utter chaos in the Middle East and everyone ganging up on Israel. But because of the Trump doctrine and those Abraham Accords specifically and these other relationships and the isolation through all of it of Iran, there appears to be just this sense of stability that Iran's on their own now. The world is a different place. And there doesn't appear to be this fear of total chaos and this massive, disruption as an effort to show an alliance with the Iranians when it comes to oil distribution and so forth. And it's such a different world to see something like that happen. These strikes on Iran, and there not be shortages of gas or a doubling of gas prices. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. A lot of you going to be in your backyards, going to have people over for Independence Day, and what an upgrade it would be to have an outdoor living space. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor can do it for you. Now, not this year. Right now, if you're wanting to have a really nice addition to your home, come autumn, I suggest that you reach out to them now in order to get the process started. It could be for your business also, but you may just get the lawn chairs out right now and get out there in the grass. You got to worry about the ticks and all that sort of stuff because of the grass, but you have that nice outdoor living space with perhaps water features, lighting features, so that at night it can be utilized and enjoyed. The smokeless fire pits, you name it, they can do it. Top of the line experts at hunterhardscapes.com. You can also go to ksgf.com. Under Nick's endorsements, get in contact with them there. And at their site, there's a little cost calculator that gives you a ballpark idea, so you know what your when you take the next step, what you're looking at, but also before and after, a little slider thing on some of the projects they've done here locally. HunterHardscapes.com. Yeah, the Gas Buddy expert says claims that gas prices will see a massive spike are incorrect on the highest level, that just even if there is a closing off of the Strait of Hormuz, you may see a quick spike in oil past the $80 barrel mark, but really nothing long-term meaningful is expected to come of it at the pump, which again to me is a demonstration of a whole different Middle East. President Trump headed off to, I believe, the Netherlands. There is a NATO meeting that is slated to take place. He stopped and spoke to reporters ahead of time about the ceasefire that lasted no time at all. And, as these reports come out, it's kind of sometimes difficult to figure out the timeline, who did what until maybe 24 hours go by. But apparently, just almost immediately, Israel and Iran, it seems like Iran first launched at least one, if not two, missiles towards Israel, and then Israel responded with quite a few back. Trump was asked about this, and he was none too happy. We'll play that audio. In fact, it's getting a lot of circulation because he used the F word on live TV, which I think. Let me tell you, the reason Trump can get away with it is because I believe most people see that is Trump. That is. As a New Jersey guy, we had an author of the week on when Trump was first running for president. This guy, and I think the book was about Trump, and he had worked with him in New Jersey, and it was during that period of time where, it's just the pearl clutching, and Trump, I can't believe he uses this language, and he's like, you got to understand, he's from, New York and New Jersey. That's how people talk. I remember in fact, I was having this discussion with my mom about a cousin's wedding that I went to back in the late 90s, and how there were a lot of guests at this wedding that were from New Jersey and New York, and they were younger guys, and just almost every other word was the F word, but it wasn't done to shock. It was just part of the everyday conversation. It would be unnatural if they didn't do that, but just how, for here in the Midwest, it's just, my goodness gracious, what do these people, why do they keep using this language? And even if it's the sort of language that doesn't necessarily offend a person, we have these sensibilities like, well, there's certain places that you shouldn't use it and so forth. And, different parts of our country are so culturally diverse. I think a lot of people see Trump as utilizing that language in public with an increased frequency, and I tend to think it's because he's more relaxed and he's being more himself. He's less disciplined and thinking, well, I shouldn't use this language here. I just believe he's gotten to the point where he is unbridled, and so with that at times comes that sort of language, as if the audience wasn't there. That's just him. Now, of course, the problem the Democrats have is they see that people like that resonates with them. And it's not because, I would argue, Trump supporters don't like it because he's saying it, but because it's authentic from him. You just feel like this guy, here is a guy who is talking normal. This is how he normally talks, and he is talking to us this way. He's not somebody different behind closed doors than he is in front of the media and the American people. The problem is when Democrats do it, again, we've talked about this, it just comes off as fake. It's clear why they're doing it. And even if that is who they really are behind closed doors, the weird thing is their authentic self is the fake self. Like, their authentic mode, talking to people, is one in which they put on a show. And so when they decide to use the dirty language, as we have increasingly seen Democrats do, it comes off as, okay, we know why you're doing this. This is a deliberate attempt in order to try and mimic what Donald Trump is doing. And you know what they say about whenever it's a flattery, whenever people are trying to steal from you or copy off you, it's flattery. And whether Trump sees it that way or not, I don't know. But anyway, we'll have that audio coming up. And then the latest, including some audio from a number of different sources on the situation with Iran. All that ahead. We have weather as well. Right now, latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a slight chance for isolated showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny and hot with a high near 92, heat index values as high as 98. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 72. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 91, heat index values as high as 98. And on Thursday, sunny with a high near 91.
There was a ceasefire announced, and that did not last very long. Apparently, because Israel is like, hey, Iran launched one or two missiles. They were stopped, and Israel gave it right back to them, and then some. There's some speculation. Well, maybe it was an accident. Maybe, in fairness, I think Iran does have a lot of newbies on the job. I mean, these are like, what are there, fifth or sixth tier interns at this point that are running things, as many of the top leadership, and then their replacements, and then their replacements that have been taken out. What sort of structural command, if any, is there currently in Iran? I mean, who is making the decisions to hit these buttons? And kind of joke about it potentially being an accident, but it wouldn't really surprise me, to be honest with you, given how bad Iran has seemed to be at all of this, in this particular juncture. Trump not too happy, expressing that he's not too happy. Of course, is this? I'm going to play the audio. This is just about an hour or so ago, as he was headed off to a NATO event in the Netherlands, and he was displaying that he was very angry at both sides. He was angry at Israel, angry at Iran, because this ceasefire is going away. Now, of course, is he really? I mean, this entire series of operations that we have observed has largely been built upon deceptions and positionings for the purpose of deception, and it's worked to a great degree of success. Is that at play here as well? Or is he genuinely frustrated with both sides? Here's what he had to say as he was heading off the White House lawn to the helicopter.
Israel says that Iran violated the peace agreement and the ceasefire agreement. Do you believe that Iran is still committed to peace?
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the doing. Do you understand that?
I like how the reporters didn't even seem fazed with the fact that he dropped the F-bomb, which apparently was live. It was airing live. I know that because of text messages that I saw that Trump just dropped the F-bomb live on TV. I think it was authentic. I don't think this, I think it was just Trump. And that's largely part of the reason it's not going to get a tremendous amount of attention, quite honestly. Now, perhaps he is upset. He may have, seen this as, hey, listen, we had this ceasefire deal and both sides are violating it, and that is a great deal of frustration. This also, at the same time, could be an attempt to once again send the message that, listen, while the United States is a real player in this, and the United States can have a role of bringing people together, ultimately, we're not controlling Israel. So just because you work out a deal that we broker or that, someone else brokers, we're not controlling the decisions that are being made by Israel, and you have to understand that. We can do what we can in order to help facilitate. We did our thing, which we stated very clearly, is to make sure that you don't have nuclear capabilities, and we've done that. And in order for that to occur, the United States had to do what the United States did, and that was our part in it. So, this could be a little bit of faux outrage in order to send the message that ultimately Israel is going to do what Israel wants to do, so don't rely on us to stop them. And it could be a combination of things. It could be Trump frustrated that this has played out the way that it did and that this ceasefire lasted half a second. But at the same time, utilizing this as an opportunity to really say, without saying it, if Israel is going to do what Israel is going to do here. Ultimately, they are calling the shots when it really comes down to whether or not they're going to engage militarily. I want to play coming up. Marco Rubio, as usual, has done an absolutely fantastic job. Now, this was actually... was this yesterday? I think it was Sunday. He was on with Margaret Brennan, who just constantly appears as if she's uncomfortable and in over her head. Her body language, whenever she reads these questions, it's almost like she's afraid to read them because she's going to say something wrong. To me, it's uncomfortable to watch. But nonetheless, Marco Rubio, once again, as Secretary of State, did an absolutely tremendous job of just dismantling the argument, if you will. This is what you'll hear is an exchange in which she is hung up on whether or not intelligence said that the authorization to put together the nuclear device had occurred. That's the point that she is attempting to make, while he, on the other hand, is saying that's not really what's relevant here. That's not what matters. And he does a great job of explaining it. Here is that exchange.
Are you saying there that the United States did not see intelligence that the Supreme Leader had ordered weaponization?
That's irrelevant. I think that question being asked in the media, that's an irrelevant question.
No,
They have
that is
everything
the
they
key
need to build a
point in
weapon.
U.S. intelligence assessments. You know
No,
that.
it's not.
Yes, it was.
No, it's
that
not.
The political decision had
well,
not
I know
been
that better
made.
than you know that, and I know that that's not the case.
But
you don't
I'm
know,
asking you
don't
whether
know
the
what you're
order
talking
was
about.
given.
And the people who say that, it doesn't matter if the order was given. They have everything they need to build nuclear weapons. Why would you bury things in a mountain, 300 feet under the ground?
Right.
Why would you bury why do they have 60% enriched uranium? You don't need 60% enriched uranium. The only countries in the world that have uranium at 60% are countries that have nuclear weapons. Because it can quickly make it 90. They have all the elements. They have. Why do they have a space program? Is Iran going to go to the moon? No, they're trying to build an ICBM.
No,
so
but that's
they
a
can one day
question.
put
That's a
warhead on
question.
it.
That's a question of intent, and you know, in the intelligence assessment, that it was that Iran wanted to be a threshold
How do
state
you know what
and
the
use this
intelligence
leverage.
assessment says?
I'm
How do
talking
you know
about
what
the
the
public
intelligence assessment
March
says?
assessment, and that's why I was asking you if you know something more from
but
March.
that's also
if
an inaccurate
order was
representation of it. That's an accurate representation of it. That's not how intelligence is read. That's not how intelligence is used. Here's what the whole world knows. Forget about intelligence. What the IAEA knows. They are enriching uranium well beyond anything you need for a civil nuclear program. So why would you enrich uranium at 60%?
Right.
If you don't intend to one day use it to take it to 90 and build a weapon.
Right.
Why are you developing ICBMs? Why do you have 8,000 short-range missiles and 2,000 to 3,000 long mid-range missiles that you continue to develop? Why do you do all these things? They
Understood.
have everything they need for a nuclear weapon. They have the delivery mechanisms, they have the enrichment capability, they have the highly enriched uranium that is stored.
Yes.
That's all we need to see.
Right. Well, and
especially in the hands of a regime that's already involved in terrorism and proxies and all kinds of things around. They are the source of all
Yes, and no one's
instability in the Middle
disputing.
East.
No one's disputing that. I'm not doing that here. And they were censured at the IAEA for that enrichment and for violating their non-proliferation agreements. I was simply asking if we had intelligence that there was an order to weaponize, because you said weaponization ambitions.
Well, we
which
have intelligence that they have
weren't
everything
doing
they
it.
need to build a nuclear
Got
weapon,
it.
and that's more than enough.
Now, this is a line in the sand discussion. You may recall Obama famously talked about the red line and then ignored it when it was crossed. And that is, at what point is it enough of a danger to do something? At what point do you say, okay, this is the red line? And what Margaret Brennan is hung up on here is, well, but do you have intelligence saying that, the great leader there said, go ahead and assemble all of this together in order to have the nuclear weapon? And Marco Rubio's point is that's not really relevant. What's relevant is all of these different pieces exist. And, of course, the goal is to do just that. And much of it, enriched uranium and these other components, are components that only serve one purpose, and that is for the purpose of putting together a nuclear weapon. And so whether the Ayatollah, the supreme leader, said, okay, go ahead and click it together now, is, in Marco Rubio's argument here, that's not the relevant factor. That's because we want to stop it before it gets to that point. Now, this is last resort discussion. We oftentimes hear that, and this is constitutionality aside, but, about using force as a last resort. The problem with, or the luxury, I suppose, of taking the position of last resort is that you can always say, well, that wasn't the last resort. You can always push it off further. So, for example, if what apparently the Margaret Brennan sort of positioning was here is that, well, we weren't at the last resort. I mean, sure, these different components existed, but the Ayatollah did not say to assemble them. Well, let's say that he did. Well, do we know that it actually happened yet? I mean, shouldn't we make sure that that's the case? And then, okay, well, they're actually doing that, but do they actually plan on did he give an order to use them? So then that becomes the new last resort. And so this argument of last resort it really is never ending until it's too late. And only in retrospect can you really truly know what the last resort was, because it is the last moment before the bad thing happens. We're going to take a break, continue on. Springfield's Talk 1041, the Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447 KSGF. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line, someone had texted in that Iran has reported shooting down F-35. And from the beginning, Iran has made these claims. One of them, I believe, was from, it was when Israel really began the offensive, and there were claims that they had shot down 2 of their fighters and that they had captured alive an Israeli female pilot, and that turned out not to be true. And someone had said that the evidence that Iran has been using, or in this particular instance, was a low-resolution photo from a game titled Armor 3, and at that, the game footage itself was of a Russian fighter jet, and that Armor 3 and War Thunder Games, they've even released statements on their webpage talking about how to spot the fakes from their games that are being used by the Iranians. And we have seen a number of different declarations made by the Iranians, whether it is, oh yes, we've captured the pilot, or we've shot these, or we're going to do this, that really never comes to be. And with Starlink being made available by Elon Musk to the Iranian people, I just find it very difficult to believe that they're not getting the actual truth. And I imagine that makes matters worse for the Iranian government if they continue to put out fake information, which clearly is for domestic consumption. I mean, they know that we all know. I mean, if you've got the Iranians claiming, oh, we shot these down or those down, that the country, Israel, for example, would probably know pretty quickly whether or not they actually lost any fighter pilots. And so that appears to be for domestic consumption. But just given with what ease, once people have access to information, and if Starlink is still up and running and available, it almost seems as if, I would go back and compare it to Democrats as the economy was tumbling down, claiming that the economy was doing wonderful, and how that just made matters worse because what people were recognizing is that they were being lied to by the government. And so in addition to our lives being disrupted, economically speaking, the people who were in charge were lying to us about it. And if in Iran, the Iranian people are being subject to these claims that make it appear as if they're really in this fight, and that includes specific claims of fighter jets being shot down, but then the Iranians have access to the truth and see that's not true, I don't think that's going to bode well domestically for the current regime. A traffic update, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the First Alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a slight chance for isolated showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny and hot with a high near 92, heat index values as high as 98. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 72. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 91, heat index values as high as 98. And on Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 91.
I want a great homeloan.com. Your home loan needs. That letter that you get, that certification that here is what you are good for when it comes to making an offer on a house, that lasts you 120 days. So, point being, you're thinking we're going to start looking for some homes, but we're not in a huge hurry, so we may not find something for a month or two. Let's wait until we find the house to start the process. That could be the difference between whether you get it or the next person gets it, who, even though they made an offer after you, they have that paperwork saying, oh, yeah, look, we're good for this, because that's what really truly matters. 120 days, that is quite a bit of time. That gives you a lot of leeway that check on your credit and the evaluation and everything is good. So day 119, you find that house. You don't have to go through that entire process again. I want a great homeloan.com for all of your home loans, refinancing, reverse mortgage needs. I want a great homeloan.com because you do. As is, we've got the ever-developing, ever-changing stories because of the rapidly changing environment regarding Israel and Iran, and you accompany that with people who just straight up lie, and you get a lot of misreporting. You get a lot of disinformation. And one of the disinformation campaigns that was run for a period of time is that the White House did not contact the people that the White House should have contacted, like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. And of course, CNN ran with the story. The problem was it was just straight up not true. It was a lie. For Chuck Schumer's part, there was a conversation with Chuck Schumer prior to the bombing. His office had to issue a retraction, as did CNN. Hakeem Jeffries, and that's a different story. We'll talk about that in a moment. He just somehow didn't pick up the phone. Now, when it comes to the office like Chuck Schumer and then CNN running with these stories, one of two things occurs in a situation like this. Either Chuck Schumer's office doesn't know what's going on. I can't imagine, this is just me, if I'm a staffer in Chuck Schumer's office and CNN calls and says, hey, did the President of the United States call the senator? I'd probably check with Senator Chuck Schumer and say, have you talked to Trump? That's something that I would, even if I would assume that it's going to go through me first, I would know about it. That's a pretty big deal to declare that the president did not do that. So this demonstrates either complete and utter incompetence and a lack of appreciation for the moment out of Chuck Schumer's office, or his office deliberately lied. Now, why would they lie? I know it may seem obvious, but a lot of people would note, well, but obviously it's going to come out. I mean, Trump's going to be able to prove it. The White House is going to be able to prove that he placed the phone call. And then they're going to have to issue a retraction. And so the world will know that that either CNN and Chuck Schumer's office were somehow just confused about the whole thing, or they were deliberately lying. Here's what sometimes occurs, and this is deliberate, I believe. Even though they know it will be momentarily, they put out a fake news story so that people who hate Trump, voters, when they hear something like Trump didn't even bother to call Chuck Schumer's office or Hakeem Jeffries' office, he didn't even bother to let these people know, he kept them out of it, and they do a Google search, they will find a news story that validates that. Because what's on the internet stays on the internet forever. And even though there may be some sort of follow-up story with the retraction, it increases the odds that people on the left are going to find some news story that backs up what they believe happened, and then they can post that on social media. I believe increasingly Democrats utilize that tactic as a way to spread disinformation. And the media is more than happy to go along with it. Because credibility is not something that they concern themselves with any longer. It is about the cause. And giving people on the left the ability to do a search for a story about how awful Trump is, and then find the story and be able to, and then having the ability to repost it to validate their beliefs in their little echo chamber, to them, that is what's more important, much more important than credibility. Now, I suppose that the other argument, the defense, would be, no, that's not it. It's just Democrats are consistently incompetent and are constantly out there making declarations that turn out not to be true, because this is a very common thing that we see. Now, I don't happen to believe either is a very encouraging defense, whether it is deliberate or just total and complete incompetence by these different Democrat elected officials. But I suspect if you're a Democrat, the defense is going to be, well, they're incompetent. Caroline Leavitt skewering CNN on Fox News, noting it was a blatant lie. Now, when it comes to Hakeem Jeffries, he apparently couldn't be bothered to pick up his phone. Now, this is supposed to be the leader of the Democrats in Congress. And it's very clear, I mean, the huge discussion publicly going on for a couple of days is whether or not President Donald Trump was going to order, our U.S. military to carry out these strikes. This isn't a caught off guard moment. No one could claim, well, I didn't know I should have my phone handy in case the president called, because, nobody had any clue this was going to happen. It was the big question of the hour. Now, if you are somebody who's in the position Hakeem Jeffries is in, and as he has demonstrated, he clearly expects that if something like that were going to happen, that he would be getting a phone call. How do you not answer your phone? How does that possibly happen? I think it's deliberate. I think it's deliberate so that Hakeem Jeffries can go out there and claim that he never talked to Donald Trump. Give what they feel is just a little bit of wiggle room where, it can't be proven to be a lie, because, I guess if it was he left a voicemail and maybe he didn't see it. And again, it's was this deliberate or incompetence? Which are the two options Democrats have consistently been serving up to the American people when it comes to their behavior. I think that Hakeem Jeffries deliberately did not take that phone call. One, I really genuinely think some of these Democrats are intimidated by Donald Trump. And they go out there and they act like they're real tough. And they make all of these absurd declarations about Trump being a dictator. But when it comes to a face-to-face conversation, I think there's just enough insecurity in them. It's a great deal of insecurity, but it comes into play that they're too uncomfortable having a conversation with the man because of the way that they behave. I think at the same time, they don't want to be asked the question, what did you say to him? Knowing full well that perhaps they don't know how this is going to play out, that Hakeem Jeffries doesn't want to take a hard stance one way or another, that, he wants to, and he may take a hard stance speaking to this group and then another stance speaking to that group, but it's a whole other thing if you actually had a conversation with the President of the United States, and what did you say in that moment? Did you agree with him? Did you say, I don't agree with you and here's why? If you don't talk to the man, you don't have to answer those questions, which means you can't be held accountable for anything other than, oopsie daisies, I didn't see that he called me. Which, again, the two choices being offered up by the Democrats is incompetency or, deliberate corruption, misdirection, whatever, however you want to categorize it. I'd like for someone, and perhaps it has happened, I'd like to understand how that happens. How do you, knowing full well that the President of the United States is at any given moment going to potentially order this sort of airstrike, not have your phone on you, waiting to see if you get a phone call from him? How does that happen? Now, like I said, this would be also different if Hakeem Jeffries like, hey, I didn't have any idea that I would be on that call list. You listen to them out there, and it's the constitutional duty. This is absolutely no question that he should have been called. So his expectations, apparently, were that he would receive a call. He should receive a call. Yet his behavior suggests otherwise. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. I think it'd be nice if someone on a national level began noting with what frequency Democrats don't pick up their phones in very important moments. This isn't a new thing. You know, Gavin Newsom made this claim about the LA riots just a couple of weeks ago. First, he tried to claim Trump never called me. Well, and then Trump showed the receipts, as they say. There were two calls placed. One was just a few seconds long, which suggests that Trump got the voicemail. So he tried again. And then the second call was much longer, in which Trump explained that he left a message. Now, this is yet another situation in which Gavin Newsom is in charge of a state. You have riots going on. You have this back and forth between the governor of California and the president of the United States regarding National Guard. And you're telling me he doesn't have his phone available to him, on him, to answer a call from the president of the United States? When Well, I think it was for different reasons, but I believe it was a Politico piece that noted Kamala Harris tried to call Gavin Newsom, I guess, to get tapped into what was going on with the LA riots, and he didn't answer that call either. I suspect for very different reasons. We saw it here in Missouri when it came to Ferguson. There were a number of even Democrats that expressed their frustration that Governor Jay Nixon was not answering his phone. Didn't know where he was. I believe Claire McCaskill even went public with that. Post-Benghazi, there was a period of time where there was frustrations expressed that no one could get a hold of Obama. Certain people could not get a hold of Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. These people just don't answer their phones when there's an emergency. When the military was seeking, I don't recall what, it was some high profile, I think it was launching an attack on what would eventually become an aspirin factory under the Bill Clinton administration. And the military had a great deal of frustration because on one hand, the Clinton administration wanted to micromanage things, but on another hand, he would not answer the phone. Would not answer the phone. This is a common theme that we have seen with Democrats, at least since the 90s, that when there is some real true emergency that is going on, or there is a decision that needs to be made that has real life consequences that could alter the shape of the national stage, or at least domestically, Democrats just somehow let it go to voicemail. And it's pretty funny when you think back some of these ads. And I believe it was the Hillary Clinton campaign when she was running against Donald Trump. Who do you want answering the phone at 3 a.m.? Well, arguably the person that will answer the phone at 3 a.m. But this is just happening with too much frequency. These Democrats in position of authority at times in which they should really be on the ball, just not answering their phones. And I don't think that should be ignored. You know, it's interesting when you look back in history, and if you ever look at why it is certain people in the lead up to World War II were labeled Nazi sympathizers, it was usually because they said, hey, this isn't something we should be involved in. Charles Lindbergh was one of them. In fact, FDR had a real political target on the back of Lindbergh because Lindbergh, like a lot of others, during that buildup in World War II, said that this isn't our fight, and all of these things that people like Churchill and others are warning about, it's just fear-mongering and scare tactics, and this isn't something that we really need to worry ourselves with. Well, because of the way things would play out, it became very clear, at least culturally in America and the rest of the world, we decided, yes, the right thing to do was get rid of Hitler, and gosh, it would have been much better if we had done it ahead of time. But that's all in hindsight. This is the reality of making decisions to stop something bad from happening, and that is you never know for sure if that bad thing would have happened and how bad it would have been. And oftentimes it's only in retrospect when it's too late that people go, yeah, we probably should have done that. And if World War II, let's say Hitler ended up not being so psychotic after all, just a little psychotic, but not something that drew us into World War II, the Charles Lindberghs and the others that were opposed to us getting involved in World War II and downplaying the severity of Hitler and his world domination and so forth, they may have very well been seen as the steady hand that did not allow themselves to get hysterical and ended up being correct in the long run. But because of how things played out. So you think about it. Let's say that we had, the United States or anyone, had taken Hitler out before Hitler became Hitler. Some people heard that he wanted to do some really bad things, conquer the world and set up some camps and everything. And then the decision was preemptively to take him out. There's a very good chance the vast majority of the world would not even know the name Hitler at this point. We know Hitler because the world did not expedite its action to push back against Hitler until it became this sort of situation in which the world was like, yeah, this guy's like attacking everyone now. We got to stop this. And I know I'm overly simplifying this. Bill Clinton was offered on a platter bin Laden by a number of different countries that did not want the guy in their country. Called the United States and said, hey, this guy here that keeps talking about, the evil West and he's a terrorist and all that sort of jazz. Do you want him? Would you want to take him? Because he's threatening to take you guys down and we don't like him so much. And the Clinton administration's decision was no. That up until that point, anything that he had done was considered a law enforcement matter. This was the position of the Justice Department under the Clinton administration, and that we didn't have jurisdiction over him in whichever Sudan, I think it was at the time. Now, had 9/11 not ever occurred, bin Laden's name would never even been known. But if Clinton had said, yeah, we're going to take this guy, we're going to arrest him, and we're going to try him for his role in a number of different terrorist attacks on U.S. interests, we would have never known what was stopped. The Clinton administration would not have been able to run around saying, well, you have no idea what we stopped. We stopped what could have been the single largest attack on this country. Frankly, if he had said that, probably would have been mocked. Like, oh, that guy was going to take down the United States of America? Okay. Wag the dog much? Now, unfortunately, we do have the hindsight of knowing what happened when the administration decided that he shouldn't be a priority and we should not take care of him at that particular given time. And we got 9/11 because of it. So much of these decisions that get made are all about hindsight, and so often it is a hindsight that we never actually get because, like I said, we don't know if this action had not been carried out. There could very well have been, at some moment, a nuclear explosion in the middle of Israel. And a lot of people will say, I don't believe that would really happen. But how many of us would have said, oh, I bet this bin Laden guy we've never heard of before is going to carry out these terrorist attacks on 9/11? We would have never believed that. It's the great disadvantage to making these decisions. And arguably, on the other side of the coin, of course, it is perfectly legitimate to argue that Iran may have never done anything. They just liked the idea of having it so that they could make those threats. We don't know. And that is one of what might be considered the burdens of leadership, making those decisions knowing that people can always second guess you and that we'll never know what would have happened if we didn't do that. That's not a defense or an argument for or against. It's just, I think, reality. Now, what is clear, and Jonathan Turley has got a great piece on this. We'll get it posted for you. Dems suddenly outraged over presidential war powers. And he just goes through and ticks off, as a Democrat, like, whether it's Obama or Clinton or all of the times that Democrats have done this very same thing. In one instance with Obama, where Congress actually voted against him taking a military action, and he did it anyway. And that level of hypocrisy actually bodes well for Trump, because a lot of people just see it for what it is, and it's, well, because Trump did it, that means it's wrong. Springfield's Talk 1041. Welcome to the show. I am Nick Reed. Friday, we are going to have a Heroes Breakfast at Scramblers. If you're a veteran this Friday, 6A to 9A, free breakfast for you. That thanks to Scramblers, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Delta Roofing, and the incredible organization, the Warriors Journey. When it comes to that time, maybe for yourself or for a parent or grandparent, that recognition that they aren't able to necessarily care for themselves, and so then there is need to get them into a home, a nursing home, or some sort of assisted living center. And oftentimes, until that moment comes, we don't have any idea what that encompasses. I mean, what's it going to cost? Does Medicare cover any of this? What gets covered? What doesn't get covered? And oftentimes, people, rightfully so, they find they worry about, do we have too many assets? Are we going to be considered too rich to get qualified for Medicare? And that will then result in unloading of assets, sell the family farm, and that may not be necessary. Ozarks Elder Law, they can build a strategy where you don't have to sell it all off. Get with them before that time comes, all right? You want to do that now. 10 area locations, free consultation. They're great people, ladies in white. You may be familiar with them, seen ads on television, and just know of their reputation. Ozarks Elder Law, reach out, get that free consultation set up, and then whatever paperwork is necessary to make sure that you are safe, protected, and taken care of, up front, you will know what the cost of that will be. It's not a billable hour situation. It's one price to fit what it is you need. OzarksElderLaw.com, also KSGF.com under Nick's endorsements. There was a new poll that was released, and Newsweek actually had a story around the poll. Almost half of Democrats say a third party is necessary, noting that the Democratic Party has struggled with unpopularity and internal dissatisfaction since a sweeping defeat, facing pronounced ideological and generational divides, compounded by widespread voter frustration and congressional leaders of the party's overall direction. According to the poll, 47% of Democrats say that a third party is now necessary. The poll comes as voters' disapproval of Democratic members of Congress has increased since February, per a recent Quinnipiac poll of 1,265 registered voters nationwide. 70% of participants said they disapprove of how Democrats are handling their jobs in Congress, while 21% approve. Among Democrats, 53% disapprove and 41% approve. Only 9% of Republicans approve of Democrat performance, while 84% disapprove, which, of course, is as expected. But I think the most telling aspect of this is when you have almost half of Democrats saying we need a third party. And I can tell you who those Democrats are. They are Democrats that are relatively normal. And what they observe in the political party that they have long felt is the party of, the working man, just the common sense stuff, is now a party that the only issues they tend to seem to stand up for are issues surrounding pornography in schools, forcing girls to take showers with boys, supporting sex change operations for underage kids, and bending over backwards in order to paint human traffickers in a sympathetic light. Those are the only real battles they fight, other than just the existential threat of Donald Trump. So when it comes to issues themselves, they find that they are in no way, shape, or form aligned with what it is that the Democrat Party displays as priorities. There was other polling that was done a few months ago, maybe a little bit less than that, but it asked Democrat voters, what do you think the top priorities are for your party? And it was transgender stuff, in which a very small I think it was under 20% of actual Democrat voters said that was a priority for them. So to have 47% of people in your own party say there needs to be a third party, that's because they don't feel as if they have a home in their own party any longer. In order to reflect that, coming up, I want to play some audio Mark Halperin had on his podcast, a Democrat consultant, and then a Democrat voter. And this Democrat voter is talking about, how as a longtime Democrat activist feels totally, completely lost, and that her party stands for nothing, and says to the Democrat consultant, convince me to not leave my party because I'm having a hard time finding a reason to stay. I want to play that audio because it's very telling, and it's insightful, but at the same time kind of obvious. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a slight chance for isolated showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny and hot with a high near 92, heat index values as high as 98. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 72. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 91, heat index values as high as 98. And on Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 91. There's a new poll came out, said that 47% of Democrats believe a third party is now necessary. Now, I would argue it's because of how extreme the Democrat Party has become. People who have been a member of the Democrat Party for some time have just they're lost. They don't even understand what it is that the party has come to represent. There was a podcast
And this is a Mark Halperin podcast, and he had a couple of guests on. One of them was Dan Turrentine, his longtime Democrat strategist. And then a self-described lifelong Democrat who said, she's been very heavily involved in campaigning. And, she's a lifelonger. But she's appalled right now and doesn't even know where she belongs, and she doesn't understand her party. Here's the exchange.
I'm a lifelong Democrat. I have been super active in campaigns. I've worked on them. I volunteered for them. I've contributed to them. I'm so appalled by the Democratic Party. I have no idea what they stand for. I have no idea what their policies are. The things that I see that they most talk about feel very bad for the country, bad for the people, super fringy. So how would you convince me to stay in that party and support it, given what is happening today?
It's a great question, Sharon. And I think you speak for a lot of people, and at times you speak for myself, right? Which is just the immense frustration with being rudderless and leaderless, and just kind of, often what we talk about is just our dislike of Trump, right? It's just, we scream and pull our hair out and say he's a king and etc. Look, when your party goes through moments like this, and Republicans have had their, frustrations, you face a choice. If the other party is speaking to you more, you like what they're saying, you like their leadership, then obviously changing parties is one option. I believe that this stuff, it's a pendulum. It swings, and kind of you stay on the inside and try to get the family to look at things a little bit differently, support candidates that might take it in a different direction. And I just go back, if we were having this conversation, and, Sean can speak to it more than I can, in 2013, there were not a lot of people, sans Mr. Halperin, who thought maybe Donald Trump would be the one to take the Republican Party in a completely new direction. So you don't know where leaders come from, time and place. But I agree with you. It is a hard time right now and frustrating.
They seem to feel like they are completely governed by fear right now. And they are in fear of a highly vocal group, the far left, but you're not hearing anyone say, and just crazy fringe things like there's something in Texas that's happening right now that there's been to legislate to allow squatters, that squatters are illegal, a thing about that. That's ridiculous, like to protect squatters' rights. Things like that. That's an easy ability for a Democrat to say, we don't agree with that.
Yeah.
There's so much low-hanging fruit. And it's like, I don't know.
Sharon, if you could pick the Democratic nominee for president.
Oh, Mark.
Right now, Ro Khanna.
Yeah.
He's
most aligned with what you're talking about, for sure, I think.
Right. And I'm originally from Pennsylvania. So I pay attention to Fetterman. I'm from that area where he's from. But I don't think he has what Ro Khanna has. But I do appreciate that he's willing and has the bravery, and which is in keeping with who he has always been. It's not just a manufactured thing. He's always been someone that just says what he thinks and what he believes and stands by his own standards. And it's crazy that in today's party, or today's Democratic Party, that someone like Fetterman that will just say, hey, I support the troops, and this was a brave moment, in whatever his tweet exactly said, that stands out. How can that be a crazy standout moment? It's just, I don't understand what they're up to.
All right. So if you missed the opening there, and I wanted to play it in its well, it wasn't the full interview, but I didn't want to chop that up. A longtime Democrat on the podcast in which she is talking with a couple of different people. It's Mark Halperin's podcast, but Dan Turrentine is the Democrat strategist. And she's like, why should I stay with, I don't even know what this party is anymore. And he spent about 90 seconds not answering her question. And this is part of the problem that the Democrat Party's, he essentially said, well, You have a couple choices. You can either just stay with it or go to the other party if you feel that the other party better represents you. Well, she doesn't want to. And the reason she doesn't want to is I suspect that she is somebody who is pro-abortion. She is somebody who is a believer that if you raise taxes on rich people, that is going to create equality. She is probably someone who believes that public education is a positive thing in its current form and should be protected in its current form. But what she doesn't like, and what I can tell you now, she was giving, when she was trying to give examples, she was really tiptoeing around, I think, what she wanted to say. And she wanted to talk about trans stuff and pornography in schools. But she knows that you cannot say that stuff. I mean, you could, because she was trying to give examples of where her party has gotten so out of sync. Well, everyone knows when it comes to polling in particular that that's an 80-20 issue. 80% of Americans are opposed to the Democrats' position when it comes to that. And she was talking about low-hanging fruit. She ended up reaching for something that was going on in Texas. And I don't know where she's from, but she talked about squatters' rights. And she was going to give another example, but she stopped herself. And I guarantee you, because it was an LGBTQ thing. And this constant, non-stop pushing of that agenda. And while she, I imagine, is somebody that considers herself an ally of LGBTQ stuff, still recognizes that they've just, as a party, gotten totally and completely out of control with it. So it leaves her without a party. Because she certainly, I imagine, doesn't have Republican ideals. But the party that once upon a time promoted the things that she believes in now promotes things like, transgenderism and open borders and always coming to the defense of criminals. And so this is why you have, separate from that poll in which 47% of people like her, Democrat voters, say we need a third party. And in reality, what they're looking for is the Democrat Party like it was 20, 30 years ago. Now, incidentally, I sympathize with this. I think that there are a lot of Republicans that find themselves in a similar situation, but not nearly as severe. As a person who believes in fiscal responsibility, I don't know where I'm supposed to go. I mean, other than the few exceptions, Eric Burlesons and the Chip Roys and, those that are treated as if they are problem children within the Republican Party, there doesn't appear to be any concern about spending. This death spiral we're in, and you've got, increasingly people like Josh Hawley that are linking arm in arm with Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, where government's the answer for everything. We need to jack up the minimum wage federally. We need to put price controls on companies that we think make too much money. We need to not cut out any of the waste and fraud in Medicare or Medicaid. And so when you are a voter that really truly does care on the, quote, Republican side about the issue of spending and deficits, I find myself saying, where am I supposed to go? Who am I supposed to support? I mean, I can support somebody like Congressman Burleson, but when it comes to a party overall, there doesn't appear to be a home. So I understand how it is that a number of these Democrats feel. I think that someone like me is in a much better position because while I do believe the Republican Party leadership is slowly marching us into this economic death spiral, at least they're not pushing for, drag shows at elementary schools and sex change operations for kids. I mean, that's just, you're talking about morally depraved and off the hinges there. This seems like a common theme. The Democrat Party, I just don't know how it picks one lane or the other without it just absolutely tearing that party apart at this point. I thought it was interesting when she asked, who would your nominee be? And she said Ro Khanna, because that's not a name that is a top-of-mind name for any American. He is somebody that does get some national attention, but he's certainly not a high-profile individual. Like, for example, if you were to ask Republicans, once Trump is no longer president, whom is it? Who do you see? Who would you like to see have the nominee? And you'd probably get you get a mixture of J.D. Vance, Ron DeSantis. You probably get some Marco Rubio, and that's because those are high-profile individuals that are clear and obvious potential presidents. The Democrats are so lacking in any of that. That is how you end up with a Democrat activist. It's like, I don't know, Ro Khanna maybe? A person that probably 95 out of 100 Democrats couldn't even name for you. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. All right, before we get to a traffic update, let's go to Tom in Mount Vernon. Tom, welcome to the show.
Hey, Nick, just an observation about the potential fragmentation of the Democrat Party with a third party.
Yes.
Art imitates life, right? So you look at who has emerged as the king of late night. Well, lo and behold, it is Greg Gutfeld. Why is that? Because Gutfeld is the only conservative late night show, so he draws a massive, dedicated conservative audience, whereas the liberal left owns every other late night spot. It's so fragmented that nobody can emerge as a number one. So Gutfeld naturally is, the most popular king of late night now. And I think that looking at fragmentation, the only really another great candidate that the Democrats got to have is the guy you see on Fox News is Harold Ford Jr.
Yeah.
He's well-reasoned and he survives, he's on the five. He's a really, really good guy to consult from that perspective, but I just think it's kind of the Democrats reserve themselves well to kind of look at life and see why has Gutfeld emerged as the king of late night. I'll leave it to you, Nick. Thanks. Bye.
Well, and I think that's a great point, Tom. Thanks. I would also point to Joe Rogan, though he in this context he doesn't have a political agenda, nor does Gutfeld. It's clear that Jimmy Kimmel and these other late night hosts that have tended to make those shows more and more irrelevant in our culture today, that they have an agenda. They don't hide it. Political agenda, Republican versus Democrat, anti-Trump. Now, somebody like Gutfeld clearly has opinions on things, but it just seems to the average person, it's all based on fact. It's all based on intellectual thought and discussion, not on, okay, well, who said it, and then I'll decide whether I agree with it. And that is increasingly what people are thirsty for. Now, the poll that he was referencing, the fracturing, Newsweek did a story about this, where 47% of Democrats said that there needs to be a third party. And I was pointing to what would be considered a normal Democrat that have seen their party go from the blue-collar working person's party to a party of transgenderism and open borders. And how, yeah, I would be looking for a, quote, third party if I were those people as well. But someone had texted in on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line that, or maybe it's that 47% are the real radical. They're the crazies who think that the Democrat Party is not crazy enough. And that's true, too. Maybe they need three parties out of the Democrat Party. There's a story, I don't know which piece this was, maybe Red State or something, but it was referencing this, and it noted that, increasingly you see Democrats that are, quote, leaving the party. And now some of those, of course, the RFK Juniors, the Tulsi Gabbards, the Elon Musk, but then you have Karine Jean-Pierre as well, who I think most people would consider to be on the extreme left. And so it probably is a mixed bag, but that's a good point. I mean, you have some of those just insane psychopathic lefties that probably also feel as if the Democrat Party, I mean, how much more extreme can it become? That's a frightening thing to think about, because what we have seen evolving over the last, I'd say really since Obama, is it keeps going further and further and further to the left. And at any given moment, I still remember, this is just, to me, sums it up, when, was it Hugh Hewitt? Someone was on with Bill Maher. This was several years ago when the transgender thing was first coming up. And they were noting that eventually there will be a demand to force girls to compete against boys who identify as girls. And he was mocked. Bill Maher is like, that is never going to happen. And I think he genuinely believed that. But that's how far and extreme the Democrat Party has gotten, to where even supporters of their own party that, just years ago were saying, well, it's never going to be that insane, it will never be that extreme, find themselves in a party that has become just that.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see a slight chance for isolated showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny and hot with a high near 92, heat index values as high as 98. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 72. For your Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 91 with a heat index value as high as 98. And on Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 91.
You know, to watch or to illustrate the point, I guess, that the Democrat Party is doubling down on the problems they already have. And this report, Kamala Harris leaning towards entering the California governor's race in 2026. It's fascinating to watch a party that still says, what did we do wrong? And then still continues to, in some capacity, back the people who did it wrong. I mean, it's just, it was such... I don't believe Trump supporters could have realistically asked for a greater victory. I mean, yeah, I guess theoretically all 50 states would have been nice, but every swing state was like 97% of counties across this country increase the number of people voting Republican or conservative. I mean, just these staggering numbers. And then what arguably is the representation of that failure is out there going to be and we all know why she's going to run for California governor. Well, she needs a job for one. What else is she going to do? I mean, really. I don't know what else this woman would do in order to get money. Aside from that, it's not unrealistic to believe that she's going to try to use that as a springboard to run for president again. I guess let her. You know who, is it JoJo Siwa? Is that how you say her name? Do you know?
I think it's Siwa.
Siwa. Now, she started out when she was really young. She was on that Dance Moms show. And then she became she started doing, even when she was young, these tours. I remember when she came to Springfield. She was at Juanita K, and it was for kids shows. They were kids shows. And I think, did she just go by JoJo, I think, during that period of time? I ask as if you were watching it or following her.
I see her a lot on social media.
Well, she came out then she became a pop star and toured the country and got a huge, huge publicity push and support when she came out as a non-binary. Oh, this was just wonderful, right? I mean, this was just incredible. Well, then she came out as lesbian, and she really got mocked a lot because she seemed to think, based off interviews she gave, that she was sort of revolutionary, that she was redefining music, and she was like the first gay icon in this stuff that had people like, girl, you're 17, you're however old. You have no clue about music history, clearly. She ended up on one of those Big Brother shows. I guess it was it here? It was Big Brother, right? Don't they have them all over the world. This is where they put a bunch of people in a house and the cameras watch them and stuff. And it became very clear. Now, she at the time was in a committed relationship with some non-binary girl. And as the show unfolded, it became very clear she was developing real, authentic feelings for a straight-up guy, like just a normal guy. And after the show ended, they're like fully in this relationship together. By all accounts, and I know this may seem offensive to some people to say, it seems like a normal relationship. She has given an interview to the Daily Mail that it's going to be interesting to see. She's going to get backlash. She told the Daily Mail, when I came out at 17, I said I'm pansexual because I don't care about gender, but then I kind of boxed myself in and said I'm a lesbian, and I think I did that because of the pressure. She said that pressure came, quote, a little bit from inside the LGBT community at times, from people I know, from partners I've had. You just get put in this world where you feel like because You now have said, oh, I'm a lesbian. You have to be a lesbian. Now, she would, around this period of time, she would go on shows like Ellen DeGeneres, and, she would just be praised. That was like the beginning of the skyrocketing of her career, and you're so brave, and what she's describing here, I actually find this to be very, very interesting. I'm wondering what it is that has given her this insight as to why it is that she went through all of that, and recognizing that for her it was because of pressure, because it was the cool thing to do, and once you get in there, you cannot get out. I mean, just this. So she was pretending to be something she wasn't. And I don't know if this guy that she's with now, I don't know who he is. He clearly was some level of celebrity because he was on Big Brother. But if just being in a normal relationship with a normal guy, potentially, if that's what it actually is, just brought her down to earth and realized, for the first time, she is actually just being her, quote, authentic self, as opposed to what other people wanted her to be and demanded that she be. The irony of it, of course, is we're always told every time somebody comes out as pansexual or non-binary or lesbian or whatever it is, that they are finding their true self. And that's why it should be encouraged. On the flip side, someone who might have actually not really ever been lesbian or pansexual or whatever, and instead is a heterosexual individual that has found apparent happiness in a heterosexual relationship, that there are some states, if she were to seek, so if that was confusing for her, some form of counseling, she'd be denied that, because that would be called conversion therapy. And see, we're only allowed to encourage people who are straight to change over or to, quote, come out as gay. But if you are somebody who has, like she is describing here in this interview with the Daily Mail, just came out as pansexual, and she was young at the time, and she's like, I didn't really care, but then I was like, oh, I'm a lesbian, and I kind of boxed myself in, and I was told I had to be one, I could not be one. And if she wanted in certain states to talk to somebody, a therapist, about that, that is the sort of thing that Democrats have pushed in numerous states to ban, making it illegal. Now, how screwed up is that? That somehow it's perfectly fine if you are questioning your sexuality towards the homosexual side and you want to have some conversations with a therapist about that, that is celebrated. But if you want to do it the other way around, that's flat out illegal in some states. I suspect she's going to get a very, very, very big backlash for her comments. One, and it's, she's already come out as straight, I guess, if you will. But the fact that she is indicating here that essentially it was pressure from the LGBT community that had her making these declarations, or at least staying with them, and it was that sort of public pressure. Which, of course, isn't it? This is the upside-down world that's been created on this particular issue, because we're supposed to believe that all the pressure is to make people stay straight, that the most oppressed people, in terms of who they are those that are in the LGBT community. But here's someone in which we're seeing, to some degree, the opposite, that the coming out as a lesbian was celebrated. Talk show host, you're so inspiring, you're so brave, you're so wonderful. But coming out as straight, that's where the backlash is. Now, you tell me which one's more oppressive. I mean, this is just based off one real-life experience. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. Hot days are here and you don't want to be stuck with no AC. And that's why I want to recommend Russell and his team. From AC tune-ups to service repairs to unit upgrades, they do it all. And the best part is they are not high pressure. If you want to repair versus replace, they are going to do that to the best of their ability. I know this to be true because I've mentioned it before, but my previous unit was 28 years old and never once did they try to use a scare tactic on me to upgrade, but I did finally upgrade about a month ago. I can already tell a huge difference in my home, and I'm very, very grateful for the work that the Foreman team did out at my home. So if your AC goes out, or maybe you're like me, maybe this is the year that you finally want to tackle that upgrade, make sure to reach out to Russell and his team. Now you can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Got a really neat text message I want to share with you on the Pyramid Roofing Company Talking Text Line. We were talking earlier about fireworks, and Ozarks First had a story about how, that inflation for fireworks that we were all supposed to, they were talking to, people were, there wasn't a huge focus on fireworks, but it was oftentimes mentioned that they come from China, it's going to be more expensive than ever, and there is no cost increase. And the story they did explained that the fireworks for the upcoming season were purchased like in the winter time, and so that happened before the tariffs, and that's why there wasn't an impact on them purchasing the fireworks. And so we were having the discussion about how different people, whether purchase or observe fireworks going off, and I was saying, I grew up, we would shoot them off, obviously, all the time as kids, and with the girl child, she's usually gone for a significant period of time that covers the 4th in the summer. And so with her not being with us, we've gone more to watching. But I know some of the people that will spend thousands of dollars, which I don't want to give the wrong impression when I say I think it's hilarious, not in a bad way. I kind of love it. And the way some people see that as what's a total waste of money. Well, what is a large portion of our money? What do we use it for? To entertain ourselves, right? For some people, it's go on vacation. For some people, it's go to the casino. For some people, it's invest in home theater equipment. It varies from person to person. So who am I to say if somebody wants to, spend a couple grand on fireworks, that somehow isn't a wise use of their dollars if it makes them happy? So I got this text in, and it said, I'm catching up this morning, and it must have been somebody listening on the podcast, and I'm at the fireworks discussion. My in-laws visit from Los Angeles every year. The brother-in-law, who was born and raised in London and has only ever lived in large cities, had a hard time wrapping his brain around the idea of all the crazy country folk out here shooting off our own fireworks. He adapted very quickly and does a fabulous job of shopping the local economy with thousands of dollars in firework purchases every year and a spectacular show for anyone with an open view of the sky. While most people watch with excitement, applause, and chatter, he watches with reverence. He recently began the process to become a citizen. I wonder if that will make him even more enthusiastic. Now, isn't that nice?
Oh, I like that.
I like that too. That's really
kind of want
fantastic.
to go to his fireworks show.
I know, right? Yeah. We got Heroes Breakfast coming up Friday, so if you want to swing on by as we broadcast live from Scramblers between 6A and 9A this Friday, and you're a veteran, you're going to get free breakfast. That thanks to Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Delta Roofing, The Warrior's Journey, fantastic organization, and of course, our friends at Scramblers. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Whether you're looking to buy or sell, maybe you, like the text that we read earlier, had family that's moved to the area from out in California, and they need help finding that new home. Emily Johnson, more than once, I've shared with you reviews, the experience people have had in utilizing Emily because she was recommended. A lot of these political refugees coming from California, and just pleased as punch with the experience they had. I remember one of the reviews in particular, just the fact that the showings, many of them were done over cell phone, like video phone, Facebook, whatever format that was used. But so they could be walked through the house. I mean, Emily Johnson, she makes it happen. She makes it happen. Whether you are thousands of miles away or just across the street, you get the same level of attention and expertise from Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. And selling, of course, and then maybe you have to do it at the same time. That can be very frightening. You got to sell a house and then buy one. And so there's, we've got to thread that needle through, make sure it all happens. And she does a great job at that as well for all of your home buying and selling needs. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Michelle Obama making some conservative news again. I find it interesting that most of the attention paid to some of the subject matter on her apparently increasingly failing podcast comes from the more conservative media. It's like that left, like, well, we don't need to pay attention to her so much any longer. And so her latest comments had to do with, she was giving advice. This whole thing, to me, is pretty typical of somebody on the left. But here she's talking about raising boys, of which you may note she doesn't have any.
And I'd say, love your son, but raise him too. Raise him to be as strong as you know he's going to have to be. Teach him about how to deal with a traffic stop, but also teach him how to communicate in a marriage.
You should have threw a boy in the mix.
I would. I'm so glad I didn't have a boy. Because he would have been a Barack Obama.
It's like baby Barack. It would have been amazing.
No, I would have felt for him.
She just borrowed our boys.
I'm beginning to think Michelle Obama is not a very good wife.
Yeah.
It's like every time, and here's the thing. This is what it is. It's like passive aggressive. She makes these like little digs, but I could see her sort of gaslighting at the same time, being like, no, I didn't mean anything by that. You know what I mean? That sort of, that little area in which you're making a snide remark about him. And she's done that. I mean, it seems
think
like
it's
every
like
week.
every single podcast that she does.
Yeah, it seems like there's this some little dig, some little snide remark, but she does it in a way in which she can say, well, no, I didn't mean anything by it. And then, I mean, it once or twice, but like you said, I don't know if she does these weekly, but it seems like once a week there's some story in which she's talking about what she doesn't like about him or how she this, that. Now she's like, oh, gosh, no, I wouldn't want a son because it might be like Barack Obama. Like, who says that? Well, but she was joking. But that's what I'm talking about. It's just this, I don't know. It's very passive-aggressive to me. But how typical is this? So here, she's giving advice on how to raise boys when she's never even had any. And the idea of having them, you could almost hear this, how she recoils about, like, oh, God, no, I wouldn't want. Who are you to give advice on raising boys? That's just not the absolute perfect sort of elite trait of someone who inherently believes that they're an expert on things that they have absolutely no experience in whatsoever. That doesn't mean that you can't have thoughts and ideas. People that don't have kids, I'm sure you can identify when some kids are raised well, others aren't. But there is something about the real life experience. But just with the authority that she presents, and, well, if I were raising, well, this is what I would. Well, you should have had. Well, God, no, I wouldn't want boys. Well, then shut your mouth. Who knows what it'll be next week with her? So glad she never had a son, because he would have been a Barack Obama. What a Jiminy Christmas. Hey, Trump and Rubio, this has gone somewhat under the radar, I think, anyhow. Secured a Rwanda-Congo peace treaty. Didn't even know that peace treaty was going on. And Pakistan has nominated Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize because of that peace treaty between those two. So I guess there's just, like, I don't know, it's a lower tier peace treaty or something. You got the Russia-Ukraine thing going on. You got Israel and Iran. And it's like, oh, by the way, now we have gotten something successfully signed, sealed, and delivered here. So, you know, like I said, it shouldn't go under the radar. It seems pretty significant. Again, Friday, we have our Heroes Breakfast, so don't forget, if you are a veteran, swing by as we will broadcast live. I know it's several days away, but it will be here before you know it at Scramblers. Free breakfast for